Hello everyone, my name is Kyle and I want to help build a blog with you utilizing a graph database and coincidentally using Python in this particular scenario. So in this part I want to focus on the administration back-end office, whatever you want to call it, the place where people can go to author posts, categories, and tags. The very first thing that we're going to end up doing is grabbing ourselves a quick admin template and then setting up our forms to deal with authoring posts, and we'll go from there. So I'm going to be downloading the Start Bootstrap Admin 2 just to get ourselves going up really quick here. Alright, so all I did here was I downloaded the Start Bootstrap Admin Template 2, and I've stuffed it into my static folder that allows me to call up CSS, JavaScript, that kind of stuff. So from Flask, I'm going to set up render template. I'm going to create a directory of templates called admin. Template.html. Now Flask happens to use Jinja 2, which is a very powerful templating engine inspired by Django's, which is another Python framework, but most other languages tend to have a Jinja 2 inspired templating language, like PHP has Twig, for example, Java has JTwig, Ruby has, I think it's called Liquid. There's tons of them out there. Go ahead and seek one out if you want to. I really like this template language, but that is not the core point of these tutorials. I'm going to go quiet. I'm going to speed up the video while I set up this admin template. Okay? I just need a couple minutes. Okay, so I have the basic template installed, ready to go underneath my admin set of URLs. Just to catch you up on what I sped through, I used the function of render template in Flask that allows me to target templates in my templates directory to point to my admin/index.html. Admin index HTML features this extends, which is a Jinja is an inheritance-based templating engine, and so all extends means is that it wants to point to another template with which to take its base core structure from. And in this case, that just happens to be our basic layout.html here, also found in the admin folder. So the first thing that I want to do is I kind of want to trim this down a little bit. I don't really need all of this stuff, although we're going to leave the majority of this front page alone because it's not hurting anybody, but we definitely need some places to go to in the admin to author our pages. So what I'm going to do here is get rid of the majority of these guys here and just create my own links to target the different aspects of our admin. Okay, so I've quickly gone ahead and I've set up all of my different links I need to go to. So my dashboard, posts, categories, and tag editors. They don't really do anything right now because we haven't really set those pages, but I now have links in the admin to deal with that. So the first thing is that post editor. So let's go ahead and deal with that. Now set up the links over here. Now, the way Jinja wants to work is that you set up content blocks with which to override. So that's the first thing that we're going to do is figure out where dashboard starts, which I believe is right here, page wrapper. And we can actually do this. Page title. I believe if defined is the correct way. actually we'll put 404. So now if I refresh, okay, so now that the logic is stating that, you know, display page title if it's defined, otherwise display no title. Probably a little better. So now I can go ahead and kill the rest of this by defining a block that I'm going to call content. Okay, and I can hide pretty much everything else, I think, or just delete it. Probably better. Let's just delete it all. Let's see where we sit. Alright. So now I refresh, I should only see this. And that is fine. Because now the real content can be overridden. So I'll grab this and cut that. Content body. And now over in my main template, I can go block content and block and paste in that bit, refresh, because we are calling our index. So underneath posts, what we can do is we can go to our admin post directory here and go return render template admin posts, let's say index.html. So first we'll need to create a folder in here called posts, and then another one called index.html. We can then get this guy to extend off of admin layout. Now if I refresh the page, boom, there we go. Everything is as it should. Block content and block, hi there, refresh, hi there. Alright, so everything is working exactly the way it should be. Okay, so if we wanted to set the page title here, we can. And we'll call that post admin. Let that refresh, refresh. Oh, my mistake. Go back over my layout. Sorry, that's Django syntax. I want to put or. There we go. Now if I go back over to admin, which should have no title, there's no title there. But if I wanted to change that, just go back over here, change title to dashboard. Refresh, let that refresh, refresh, dashboard. Now we have post admin. Okay, now we're cooking. So let's acquire our data. So this is our post list, so naturally let's acquire our posts. So I'm going to go ahead and create a container bucket for posts, and we're going to use session.run to do a very basic query to grab all objects named post and return them, and order by n dot added descending. So you'll notice that some things in Cypher happen to resemble a little bit of SQL-ness. Not a whole lot, but you can do your basic where clauses and your order bys using this syntax. So for post and posts, I want to set into posts a post n. I just want the whole object. I don't care what it is. And that should be that. I should now be able to posts equal posts. And that data structure should now be available. So now if I go ahead and refresh this page and get the debugger, come back in. We'll notice that post is empty, and well, that's to be expected. There was really nothing to iterate through. So that's working perfectly. Just wonderful. And that's really the long and short of it. So now in here, we can grab, let's say, a list example. I'm going to go ahead and pull up in our pages here a list of, I'm going to go ahead and do tables. Just for simplicity, I promise you, just for simplicity. Actually, if you excuse me, I'm going to go ahead and look it up here. SP admin 2. I'm just gonna. I like to do this. I like to just kind of jump into here and kind of grab what it is I'm looking for. So I just want the kitchen sink. It's pretty much exactly what I'm looking for. So I'll grab the table responsive. I want the panel body. No, I don't want the panel. Just want to grab this div and that table. Paste that in. I should be able to see it in my admin. Perfect. Wonderful. Let's format this back out correctly. Alright. So we'll give it the ID, we'll give it a title, and we will give it a status published, or whether it's published or not, and then your basic tools. And now tools can be like, you know, your delete functions and stuff, right? Get rid of these two rows, and we can do a standard for post and posts. And we'll put in post.id, post.title, post.published, and I need to grab a button example. If there are any to grab. Buttons, there you are. Yeah, normal button should be fine. Maybe even links. Yeah. LN buttons. Yeah, let's do LN buttons. And we'll call that delete. We'll give it danger. And put on an on click window.location equals, and then URL for admin post edit, and we'll give it the ID of post.id. It just occurred to me that I put on a data constraint onto my IDs based on a classic mindset. Now, one thing to note is that while Neo4j nodes have an ID, the trouble is that the IDs can be shared once a post is deleted, because there is no such thing as table or even label separation. Everything just kind of comes into this giant node soup. So once a node is deleted that had an ID, it will try to recycle that ID for an upcoming node. So you never really want to deal with IDs when it deals with Neo. But what we can do is still use the post ID method here. But what we do is we generate an ID ourselves, typically in the way of a unique ID type algorithm, or whatever you want to use, MD5 hash, it doesn't really matter, but you're generating an ID to implant into the node, and then we can index based on that. So I'm going to go ahead and kill the int constraint on each of these, knowing that I'm going to be using the UID system, which contains letters as well as numbers. Alright, okay, so we have our URL generated now. Now, when I refresh this page, we should still not see anything at all. I've not tried this before, so please bear with me, but I think if I do an else, I can do a tr and a td call span 4. Just say no posts. Excellent. So that's a unique feature of templating engines like Jinja and Twig and stuff, is in a for loop, if you put in an else clause, then it will basically say, hey, if there's nothing in this array, then trigger this block here, right? So no posts. Excellent, wonderful. Now we need a button to create posts, obviously. So let's go ahead and grab a link for that. New block level button. No. Ooh, how about one of these guys? These large circle buttons. Gotta be one for adding one. This guy. Never been that wonderful with design, but I think we're just going to go ahead and put it above the table. That's what I want. I want plus. There we go. Okay. BTN success. Default. I should at least make it green. Perfect. All right. Looks a little strange, but you know, adding a good old BR and oh no. There we go. No one's the wiser. I know, it's awful. Leave me alone. On click window dot location equals URL 4 admin post new. Create a new post. Let's go ahead and do that now. Let me just clear up my stuff here. Add new post. So I'm going to cheat. I'm going to head on over to this form here. This form example, and just start ripping items. So I know I'll need a text input. Okay. So now we should have text input. So we'll call that title. This is the blog title. Method equals post. Alright, method not allowed. Perfect. Okay, so one thing I should really do here is put in a get and a post. Alright, so now we have allowed post into here as well. Alright, so we're rocking here. Okay, so we have our form. now we need to construct our post object and send that to Neo as a created node. So let's do that now. First thing is first, I need to import the request object. And while I'm here, I'm also going to import time and UUID. All right, and I will explain those in just a moment. Get back to my logic here. All right, so first things first, we're gonna check to see if this is even a post. So equals post. And so if we are, then let's just process this. I know you should probably be doing a lot of validation at this point. Not even going to bother with that here. It's just kind of beyond the scope of this. I'm already going way overboard with the whole template thing. Whoops, don't save too early. All right, so our post object is going to look like this. We need a UID, which we are going to do this. We're going to generate a new post ID that uses the UUID, UUID4. Now we're going to generate a fairly lengthy unique identifier. Now we're going to use our UID. Now the problem is, the thing is, you don't want to save an ID to your object, because what's going to end up happening is that what you're going to get back when you try to get it, when you try to reference the ID, is the node's system ID. And while that's not always a bad thing, again, as we talked about earlier, the IDs get recycled and it just becomes becomes kind of a big mess. What we're going to do is regenerate our UID and store it in a field called UID. So we have our UID here. Now we want our title to be to be request.form.title. We want our content to be request.form.content. And we want our date, and we want our, slug, almost forgot about that, to be slug. And we want our date added to be time.time, and our date updated to be time.time. Now, in theory, those two should be the exact same timestamp, but whatever. Okay, so how do you take a dictionary, associative array, or whatever you want to call it, and persist that into a Neo database? Well, we use the same kind of thing that we would use with MySQL in the way of parameters. And parameters do all that, all that nice stuff, such as auto escaping and preventing injection, believe it or not. So we're just going to go ahead and do that. So you do your standard session run, and you call in create. We're going to call it, we're going to give it the node identifier of P with the label of post, and we're going to close that off and start a new JSON document. Now here is how the parameters work. So I'm going to supply UID, and I'm going to give it the named parameter of UID. Okay? And we're going to do that for everything else. Title, but you want to make sure that what you're providing here in between the brackets matches up with the key over here, right? So for slug, it's going to be slug. For content, it's going to be content. Right? Whoops. Date added is going to be date added. And date updated is going to be date updated. Alright. So Python really doesn't like when I go too far overboard. So I'll just put that there. Now, the second parameter in the run allows you to supply your parameters. Well, we've already built the object here. So all we need to do is supply that here. And that's it. By and large, that should create the post with the data that we intend to be within those slots. Now, the coolest part about Neo's create system is that you can immediately, without a second query, return that object that you just created. And to do that, you simply just need to supply the return and then the node identifier. Or node alias. I should call them aliases from now, because that's really what they are. So I'm just going to go ahead and create posts and align that up. So I'm going to do a for loop through posts and check to see if the post equals the generated post ID that we saved up here. Okay, and if so, we're going to redirect. So if for post in posts, if post dot post UID equals post ID, then, and now I have to bring in a couple things, redirect and URL for. Alright, we're going to return a redirect for the URL of admin posts and call it a day. Alright, so, you know, everything willing, when this thing runs, and there shouldn't be any more breakpoints. When this thing runs, when I hit submit, this should create a new post. Let's try that now. Okay, so, I mean, fair enough, that was my mistake. I completely forgot to return that as the string representation. Alright, so let's go ahead and refresh that server and try that one more time. Also, my apologies, I forgot to do that. Alright. So we should actually have a couple of the same objects in here now. Yeah. Okay, so let's just match n and then delete n. Alright. So refreshing that, and now that my dumb mistake is possibly resolved, let's restart the server and try one more time. There we go. Okay, so I happen to notice that if we do the match n, our post is in here, complete with all the content that we wanted out of it, and we can see that in the text representation of that node. But it still says no post, and this is actually due to a small, unfortunate bug that I forgot to deal with over here, but we can deal with now. So I forgot to assign posts, so all we're doing is looping through an empty list at all times, right? So if we do data posts equals, and then change this to data posts, there we have it. We now have our list of posts. And so now you see over here where it says number ID here. This is what I'm talking about. Even though I've deleted everything, even though I've done everything I can, this ID here is still 5 and not the representation that we wanted. If I go over here into my index, and you'll see that I used post.id. I kind of did that on purpose to demonstrate this. So this ID right here is the actual node ID. Where if I put in a U here and refresh, you'll see that now this is the real ID that we generated. So instead of representing it like this, what I'm gonna do is kill this. So we're no longer dealing with a ID field, and I'm just going to go ahead and link the title so it looks a little bit more friendly. URL for admin post edit post ID equals post.uid. All right, refresh. Here we go, and we see the edit up here, and sure enough, we're all good to go. Okay, so now if we were to add another one and fill it all in like this, submit, there it is. Look how fast that is. It's all the power of NoSQL, most of the speed of a standard NoSQL database. It's just a screamer. It's just really, really fast and very functional. I noticed we forgot to put our published field in there, but you'll happen to notice this too. When you query against something in Neo, if the field doesn't exist, it likes to fail-safe down. So if you try to ask for a property in a label that exists for some and doesn't for others, it's only going to take into consideration the nodes that have that property. And in this case here, because we don't have a published property in here, it just says none. Right? I'm not even doing a failsafe here. So what I'm actually going to do, yes, if post.published, else no. That should come back with no. Now if I'm ever to have a post that has a published field set to any value that doesn't evaluate to false, now we'll have yes, and that's perfect. That's exactly what we want. So I'll kill these fields here. And there we have it. We have our first couple of posts in our admin. So now the very last thing that we need to deal with is the editing of these posts. So when we click on it, we obviously see this page. Not ideal. Now we need to set up the editor to also use this same template to auto-populate, pre-populate the fields with existing data and allow an update to happen. So here we have the post ID down here. So obviously, coming into this page, the first thing we want to do is acquire the post. So we'll grab the data posts, run the session, and we'll call match and post. And then what we can do for a very quick search is supply a JSON document to match against. This prevents you from having to write where clauses. So, and the way that looks is this: UID and then return P. And in here, I can set UID to be post ID. And now for post in data posts, I can then put post equals none for P in data posts. And just, post equals P N. And that should acquire us our whole post object. So if I were to render the template as admin posts edit.html with page title equals edit post and post equals post, we should now have everything necessary for this page. Oh, my apologies, I wrote my query wrong, and you probably did already notice that. You want to make sure the aliases match when you return stuff. So refresh. And then of course aliases need to match Kyle. There we go. Alright, so we have our edit post up. Now we need to populate the fields. So over here we can do a value equals post.title or nothing. Alright, and value equals post.slug or nothing. Probably put none. post.content or none. Alright, refresh, and there's our data in here. Perfect. Now we need to populate it with something else. So if I were to just properly slugify this, this is a slug, and then submit, we'll submit into my current route, which we have not set up yet. So if request.method equals post, then we want to also make sure that this route supports both get and post. Whoops! Gotta stop doing that. I'm an incessant saver, and auto refreshing stuff always bites me like that. Okay, so at this point we don't need everything about the post object. We just need a couple things here. We only need the ID. We only need these fields because that's all we need to update. The first thing we got to do is find the record in the database once more, and then we can run a set operation against each field that we want to replace. Okay, so let's do that. So session.run. We can practice the query too if we wanted to, so let's actually do that first. So match p post where title equals, what do we have here, this guy, right, return p. Oops, what did I do wrong there? Oop, oh, forgot the bracket. Right, so we have our record here. Turn the row. So after the match, but before the return, we can set up a set p.slug equals, and then we can put whatever we want in here. So you'll see that updated the slug to whatever we want. And now, if I were to just return that record, you'll notice that it's constantly like that now. So knowing that, we can copy that, paste that, and we can set this to be title. Sorry, we want to match against the UID. My apologies. So we set the title to be title. We set p.slug to equal slug. p.content to equal content. And p.date updated to equal date updated. And then to return n, return p, I mean. Alright, so now we supply our post object again. Alright, we grab our post. We just want to make sure that everything is everything came back just fine. So we will basically do this exact same thing over here. So if everything is good, but instead of that, we're going to go back to the editor, I think. So post edit, and then post ID equals post ID. Okay, so that should do it, honestly speaking. So if I were to submit this, if it were running, okay, so here we have whatever we want. So let's change that to something sluggy. Oh, sorry. All right, we wanted post ID in here. There we go. So that was the problem, is it was missing the UID from here, so we can properly replace this parameter. All right, so refresh, boom, something sluggy. Submit, something sluggy. So now if we go back to posts and back to the other one, something sluggy. So therefore, it properly updated and everything is kosher. If I hit plus, post is undefined. What we probably want to do what we probably want to do in this case is to set post equal none. These really should be blank. Not sure what I was thinking. There we go. Okay, so we have our new post and we have our edit post. And submitting will actually change the data in Vault. Okay. Perfect. Alright, we're all on our way here. Okay, so we're almost ready to start doing some of the more interesting stuff, such as creating relationships between something, but we need something else in the database to create a relationship to. So in that case, let's start dealing with categories. A lot of the logic is going to be carried over from the categories, to the categories from the posts. So I'm just going to speed along the video to set up the form, okay? Okay, so let's do that. Okay, so this is the first time I'm actually testing this out. Let's try it out. Categories, no categories. Create a new category. Category 1, cat 1, submit. Okay, there's our category. Click into it to edit. This is actually going to be category 2. Submit. Oh, whoops. Yeah, I forgot about that. Get and post. Refresh, boom, done. Alright, cool. So now we have categories. Okay, so to bring you through what I've done is, so for my category list, much like what we did above, we run a session run. We do a match against all nodes with the label of category, return them all, and then I run through each one and kind of give a flattened array kind of thing. I know I could probably use like some sort of a map function to do that as well, but keeping it simple. I then feed into a new categories index HTML and supply the a title of categories with all the flattened categories in it. I'm not even worried about ordering this, but if I wanted to, order by c.title ascending, so we can at least get it in alphabetical order. So for the new, again, much like the post new, we on a base page load, we just direct them over to the template, which is the base edit template with a title and no category currently chosen. Upon submit, we generate a UID for the category ID, supply that along with a title and a slug, and a date updated and date added. We then run the session run to create that node and return it back, and we check against the UID of the one that we acquired, as well as the one that we have generated, against the one we have generated, and if that is correct, then it will redirect us back to the categories list. Same thing for the edit. The only difference in here being that we are acquiring the category that we are looking for right away before pumping it into the page, and upon submission we are supplying basically the same concept except minus the date added. We are also not generating a new UID for this object. So that's it. That's the categories editor. It's very basic and robust, but that's really all you need for a category. And so now the big thing, the big whatever, associating a post to a category. How do you create a relationship in Neo? How do you create relationships between two nodes so that they know about each other? All right. So first of all, let's match our nodes so that we can see what we're dealing with here. So we have a category and two posts, right? So now let's say we wanted to associate hi there with category 2. Quite frankly, the easiest way to do that is to do 2 matches and then create the relationship, create the edge, quote unquote. So let's match the first one. So we want to look up all posts that have the title of hi there. I believe that's what it was. Just hi there, yeah. And then we want to look up all category that have the title of category 2. Now, if I were to return P and C here, we would get these 2 nodes. In order to create a relationship, what we do is say create between our acquired post and our acquired category a relationship. Whoops. I think it was in insert mode. A relationship to our category, and we can give a label to this particular edge, and we can call it has category. Now, and we can even supply an E for that for edge. P, E, C can return edges as well. And now, when I press go here, what should happen is that post should now be unidirectionally linked to category 2. And we should see that with an arrow pointing to each other. And there it is. Now, hi there has a relationship edge called has category with category 2. So now, I can do all kinds of fun little queries here. So if I wanted to, say, match all posts that contain a relationship of has category with anything and return the post, I should get hi there, right? If I wanted to show all categories that has category with anything, we get nothing. Okay? If I wanted to just say whatever node, regardless of what it is, has a category at all, return it, and that would be hi there. If I wanted to return the relationship of a category that happens to be called category 2, I would get hi there. Because now we have just discerned that we are looking for all nodes that have any kind of edge link to category 2, regardless of what kind of edge that is. So there's lots of really cool ways to get to your data, and that is exactly where a graph database really flourishes. It is fantastic at being able to quickly find the data you're looking for, regardless of how complex the relationship happens to be. While a blog might seem like a little bit overkill to throw a graph database at, it's probably already cranking in your head. It's already probably there about how you can piece together a quick graph system to create a very robust blog in an incredibly short period of time. Okay, because the query I just showed you here, how to create that edge, is going to be no different than how we implement it into the blog website. Alright, so when I do a match to get all nodes and return them, we will see that hi there now has category 2. Meanwhile, this little guy has no category at all. How do we represent that? How do we put that into the site? Okay, so we have our list of posts. It might be worthwhile to show what category they're associated with, and we can do that. If we go all the way back up to our original post listing, and we notice here that we're matching all posts and just returning them, right? So change this over to P. Okay, and we are looking for the categories associated with it. Alright, now this should, in theory, acquire the posts with their categories. If I pump that into here, whoops, right, yes, P. We should see that it even comes included with the edge, although that will not be represented to us. As you'll notice, we have down here autocomplete. If we turn that off, we will get a more exact vision of what kind of data we're acquiring here. So you'll see that I have a hi there, a category 2, and this. But if we go over into rows, you will see that now everything is separated out by object, right? So hi there has a category, and something sluggy also seems to have a category. That doesn't really make much sense now, does it? Okay, so if I do a query to acquire the post and the category in the same return, what we're going to notice is a little bit of a mishmash going on here. So you'll see over here in the row representation that for every post in the P category, there will be an associative C, and that happens to be the category. But you'll notice that the category 2 happens to also be associated with something sluggy. That's an odd behavior, and one that we don't necessarily want. So how do we deal with that? Well, there is a concept where it's called an optional match. It will, everything that's within a match is a required acquisition, where everything in an optional match can be represented as null. And it's a very easy thing to do. You just type optional match, and that's it. And now, but still, if you did this, by the way, if we did this, you'll still see the same problem, because we still need to tell it what condition with which to call a null. So we take the P that we are matching against, and we do the unidirectional match, and we go. Now something sluggy doesn't have a category, while hi there absolutely does. And that is exactly the kind of representation that we're looking for. So category can be optional. We don't want it to be optional, but it can be optional. It might as well allow that failsafe. So now what we can do is we can supply that query into our script. Supply the post object itself, but then we can give better aliases. So return P as post and C as category. And let's see how well that works. First of all, let me just make sure that query runs. Yeah, okay, just making sure. Bring that down to the next line. So now we have just supplied our post object in here. So now in theory, to access anything within the post itself, what we're looking to do is supply the sub object of what we're trying to deal with. So for every post, there will be a post object and there will be a category object. So let's see how we can represent that in the template. So if I'm not mistaken, this page should error out or just come up with none. And let's go into our post index and figure out what we can do here. So post.post.title, let's see, there it is, we are back with post.post.uid. Alright, we're back in business on this one. Okay, so I mean that wasn't so tough, right? Now we can supply a new table header for category. And we can go post.category.title or NA. Refresh, and look at that. We have a category and an NA. So that worked out pretty swimmingly. Now we have the associated category in here, and we didn't even have to do a join. We didn't have to do a lookup. We just had to tell Neo that, hey, we're also looking to get the category information back if it's available. So let's update the editor so that we can associate categories in the post. So let's start off with categoryless wonder here, and figure out what we got to do to make that work. So in the post editor, we should have a drop-down form. Let's see if we can't find one in here. We can't just lift. Yeah, there it is. Selects. Okay, just grab this guy. I tell you, I'm super lazy here when it comes to this stuff. That's what I love about these templates. I can just copy and paste as necessary. So with this one, we will name category, and we will supply this with an optional option, valued -1 or 0, to be select category. We will do a simple for loop for categories, for category in categories, and for option value equals category dot UID and category dot title. Now, to the astute observer, we will need to now also supply the editor with all the categories. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we're going to put categories and data cats equals session.run match C category return C order by C.title ascending. Okay, and now for cat in data cats, let's categories.append cat C, and then categories equal categories, and we should see category 2. Perfect. All right, let's go ahead and throw that also over into the edit. Again, there's like 110 different better ways with which to deal with this separation here, but again, this is all for the sake of example. So refresh, and then supply categories. Refresh, there's category 2. All right, so we're editing a post, we have category 2 selected, and now in the post process, we get to associate the edge. Okay, so the first thing that we want to do is we want to update our post object model here. So we want to include the UID of the category that we want to associate with. And so what we're going to have to do is tell the post to unassociate with all categories that it might be associated with, you know, and there's always one usually. and then recreate the edge every time. You could set up a check if you wanted to, like set up a second query if you wanted to, that checks to see if that edge already exists. But for the sake of example here, we're just going to have a system that deletes existing edges and then recreates the edge, just to keep it fresh, just to make sure everything is done in a concise manner. You could make this system better in every possible way till the cows come home. Honestly, like this is all just pure example. Okay, so we have our return object down here, and that's exactly where it needs to be. From here, we can delete the edge. Okay, so I rearranged the query a little bit to be a little bit more readable in this sense, because there's a few things that we got to do. So first thing we're doing is we're matching against the post, right? And then we are setting the post data in here. So the second thing we need to do is do that optional match against the relationship. But importantly, we have to give the first potential relationship a name. That can be a has category. So we'll put that there. With the data in the set here, this should be uninterrupted. But now we want to delete rel1 while returning p, and then we want to create. Okay, apologies for that. I just had to play around a little bit to try and come up with a decent way of doing this, because like the way I was doing it before, I was doing a weird thing where I was creating a blank category node for some weird reason. Anyways, so here's what I ended up doing. I separated out, actually needlessly, the query object here, so we'll just bring that guy back in, because it's not necessary for that to be separated out anymore like it once was. Okay, so we're doing much of the same here. So with the posts, we're acquiring the post we're matching the post with the UID we supplied, and that comes from the query string. I mean, that comes from the URL. We are then optionally matching up against a relationship of some variety. We are then setting each one of the individual fields, and then deleting rel1 if it exists. And then once all said is done, once all that's said is done, return the post. Okay? And then I have a separate query here. Now, when one runs every update, it's going to delete the category right away. But we were doing that anyways. So all we're doing here in this one is that we're going to detect if we have supplied a cat UID, and if that evaluates the true, then we're going to try and associate it with it. So in a second session run, one that I'm not necessarily interested in totally acquiring the data for, is to match against the post and then the category, and then create unique has category attached between the post and the category. Create unique is a way to tell Neo to create a relationship if it doesn't exist of this type, but if one does exist of this type, then ignore it. So then I return P and C, but I'm not necessarily doing anything with that data, so I'm going to ignore that, and then supply the same post object between the two here, because we're using the same parameters. And then that's it. What you see before you is this. This allows me to select category 2, hit submit, and therefore we are now at category 2. If I were to not choose a category, it disassociates all categories with that particular post. Pretty cool, eh? Let me just show you what our graph now looks like. So now we have two posts, both associated with category 2. In our database, we have two relationships between two different posts pointing to the same category. So now, if I were to do something like, say, I wanted to get all posts for a category, I could do one of the queries like I did before, or I could do something like this. So match between category where title is like category 2, and let's just make sure that's, what did I do? Oh, I forgot to close that parentheses. Alright, so that returns back category 2. What if I just wanted to return the post it's associated with? Well, I can then use the bidirectional, right? And I can just do post and return back P. Now, this didn't work because it's going the wrong direction. However, if I were to do this direction, and yes, you can flip the direction, you'll see I get my posts. This is exactly the same as if we were to do something like this. Right? The long and short of it is that P has to point to C in order for this relationship to work. Okay? Now, you can supply an arrowless if you don't care about the direction. So we'll do an omnidirectional match. So long as P is associated with C in any way, it will just return every P that's associated with a category titled category 2, regardless of what that relationship is or which way the arrow is pointing. A very powerful, powerful system. Where do we go from here? So we have a post admin where we can create categories. Right? We can then associate posts to those categories. Now comes the tags, and tags are interesting. Like, this is the best. This is the reason why you choose a blog as a basic starting ground for this type of stuff, because you have a post that has a couple of associations, such as a category, which is a many-to-one relationship, and then you have tags, which are a many-to-many relationship. So the idea here is that we should be allowed to associate multiple tags with a post. And as you might have already guessed, that is very easily accomplished using Neo, with the complicated aspect simply being that you know, the query for the editing and the creating of posts can start getting a little bit long in the tooth. So this is where you start creating your abstractions. Neo doesn't need a whole lot of abstraction. It doesn't need a whole lot more to it. It just needs to know about specific things that you want to supply it, right? So if you were to create an abstraction to Neo, you might create a, you know, create relationship function, and you would supply two node IDs for that. You might create a detach one. You might create a couple like high-level functions that deal with some of the base groundwork when dealing with Neo queries. But we will deal with the tags in the next video. Thank you for watching.